Over the last few videos, I've been talking a lot about the unique scoliosis mobility to stability formula that I use in my online course, the Scoliosis Correction Protocol Exercises. And I've even broken down the different strategies and techniques I used within that formula. Today, I'm going to take you behind the scenes and share with you a few real-life examples of how the scoliosis mobility to stability formula works in practice. I've chosen 3 people from different age groups so that you can see how this method can be applied to different situations. In case you haven't seen the other videos, this is actually number 5 of a free 6-part series where I break down the scoliosis stability to mobility formula and how it can slow down, stop, or even reduce your scoliotic curve. I also explain why following your doctor's advice of wait and see isn't going to change your curve for the better. In fact, it might even end up getting worse and possibly lead to bracing and surgery. So, in case you haven't watched the first 4 videos yet, make sure you go back and catch up because I give away a lot of information there, and some of that is way more valuable than stuff you'll find free online or even some paid courses for scoliosis. Okay, firstly, I want to introduce you to Vanessa. She's going to talk about her experience with the Scoliosis Correction Protocol exercises. I want you guys to meet Vanessa. Vanessa's been one of my students for a year now with the Scoliosis Correction Protocol. And we're just going to chit-chat back and forth about her experience with scoliosis and her experience with the protocol. So, Vanessa, over to you. Tell me when you first discovered your scoliosis.
I remember, it's funny, I remember being around 10 and there was a group that came to our school and they were doing that standard kind of bend over and touch your toes. We had no idea what it was. They really didn't explain it. It was like, we're checking if you have scoliosis, you know? And it sounded very scary, this word, at 10 years old. And so they kind of looked at me, they took a little bit extra time with me, and I'm thinking, oh God, I don't want it, I don't want it. And they're like, you might have it. I'm like, I don't want it. And they're like, okay, you don't have it. I'm like, all right. I was like really excited about that. And then it wasn't until I was going out for the soccer team my freshman year of high school that I had to get a clearance from my doctor. And so I went in and they confirmed that, yes, you have scoliosis. And so, yeah, that's when I found out.
Okay. All right. So you knew about it then as a teenager?
Yes.
All right. Then fast forward, you have a few kids, 3 kids, and you're a yoga teacher. And what did you notice with your scoliosis?
Well, I think why I even gravitated towards yoga in the first place is because even at a very young age of, newly married at 23, I would be getting out of the bed in the morning like, oh, ouch,
Right.
And my husband would be like, why are you in so much pain?
Yeah.
I'm like, I just always had some amount of pain. And then I went and found yoga. And then I started realizing, wow, this is a beneficial practice, at least stretching and moving this way. Then I became a yoga teacher. And then 3 kids later, I still feel some of that discomfort and thought I really need to look for some tools that are more specific to scoliosis. And that's when I came across your program.
Perfect. So you came across my program, which is the Scoliosis Correction Protocol. She did the complete protocol, which included some assessments as well. Can you remember what we found on those assessments?
Yeah, I remember feeling like that one way of rotation was more limited than the other, and I really felt grateful to kind of figure that out in my body.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can be in your body but not really understand that, and so it was helpful to kind of get some tips of how to hold that side longer to create more space and more rotation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we also found with your feet, we found bunions, and so bunions is something that can affect the way the foot works, which then affects the knees and the hips, and that can go up into the pelvis. And then when we did some of the plank exercises, there was a difference. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I that's not the rotation though. That's kind of like a weakness that I had on the one side.
Weakness between one side and the other.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Vanessa has the classic reverse S-shaped scoliosis, which is the most common type, and that's the one that happens mainly when you're a teenager. And so with the Scoliosis Correction Protocol exercises, she has these specific exercises to do. And can you tell me a little bit about your experience of doing these exercises that fit your curve?
Yeah, I find that it's been really great to work with you and get these tools because I can kind of see what movements are beneficial to my scoliosis and helping me sort of keep it from getting worse and maybe even getting it a little bit better versus some that might put me in the other direction. Kind of fall into the curve, so to speak.
And have you noticed any benefits over this last year of doing the Scoliosis Correction Protocol?
Yeah, I feel like I have more range of motion in certain ways than I did before, and even deeper breath into
Nice.
my body.
Yeah.
In yoga, I would notice it. Like before, where I'd get into a shape, I would have a hard time breathing into that area. Now I feel more freedom of movement of my lungs, even,
Yeah.
which I thought was pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. And that's very common because the lungs sit inside the rib cage and there's no space between the lungs and the ribs. So you start moving the ribs and the spine, you're going to move the lungs as well. So thank you very much for coming here today, and thank you for doing the program. I'm glad you felt benefits from it. So I hope you guys have enjoyed that, listening to Vanessa and her experience with the scoliosis correction protocol. Okay, next, I want to share with you Michelle's story. She's one of my 70-year-old clients who managed to avoid pelvic surgery by following the specific exercises for her scoliosis. This is Michelle's x-ray. And the reason she got this was because over the previous few years, she had felt as though she was getting more bent over and less flexible. Now, 6 months before doing the course, she had a sudden onset of excruciating back pain and constipation. Now, they both resolved after a few days, but the pain, coupled with her feeling of twisting and being more bent over, spurred her on to get the x-ray. Now, in addition to the back pain, she was also having a sense of pressure in her pelvis, so she was examined by a gynecologist as well. So at the end of the test, she was diagnosed with having an 18-degree thoracic laboscoliosis. So that's in the thorax, and then a 40-degree lumbar dextroscoliosis, so in the lower back. She also had some loss of disc height between T8 and T9. And the T there simply refers to T for thoracic. She also was diagnosed as having a prolapse, which explained the sense of pressure she felt in her lower abdomen. Interestingly, a prolapse is very common if the lumbar curve is large, as it is in Michelle's case. So her doctor said that he would monitor the curve so that he could check on it to see if it got worse. Well, we know that on average, a curve will progress between 1 and 7 degrees a year in people over the age of 50. So this approach is very passive, and if you've been watching any of these videos in this series, you know I'm not a fan of this. So she was also offered surgery for the prolapse, but she wasn't keen on that as she had a hysterectomy before, and she found the recovery very difficult. So she decided to investigate some other options that were there for her back. So she got advice from chiropractors, physical therapists and her doctor, but she felt that they were not actually helping her. They were mainly just giving her short-term relief with massage and adjustments. So I'm not a fan of people with scoliosis seeing just any old chiropractor, physical therapist or massage therapist, as more often than not they don't understand scoliosis. Now, it was about this time that she decided to give the Scoliosis Correction Protocol exercise course a go. Now, after a few weeks, this is what she had to say. She said, "My chiropractors, physical therapists, and my GP, that's her doctor, all gave me conflicting opinions. The course explained to me how the upper and lower curve impact each other and gave me a plan going forward." So all she really wanted was a plan. Now, she ended up going through the course and she learned specific exercises for scoliosis. Now, she also learned how to move. So in this video, for example, she's doing a movement that starts with her leg but progresses up her spine, up to her pelvis and into her spine. And this approach addresses both the frontal plane, so that's left and right, and the transverse plane, that's the rotation, imbalances in her lumbar spine. Now, a while ago, she sent me this picture of her home setup. So she had these gymnastic stool bars installed in her house because she wanted to be specific with how she did the exercises. And she also dedicated an area in her house to correcting the curve. Interestingly, there's some great research on habits, and having an area dedicated to exercise can really make the habit of exercise come true for you. Okay, so what she has on the left, you'll see she's got lots of photos printed out, and what she found was that if she printed out photos of certain exercises, she can just quickly glance at them to double check that she's doing them correctly, save her having to look up online. And I thought that was such a good strategy, and I was very proud of her for sending me that. So she now understands exactly what position she should be in order to work her lower curve and her upper curve in the most effective way. I also helped her online with some easy yet highly effective exercises for her pelvic floor that she could do at home without any need to see a pelvic floor therapist. Now, she did these exercises daily while strengthening and mobilizing her lumbar curve, and that actually helped her to avoid surgery. Lastly, I want to tell you about Charlotte. When she was just 12, her parents were shocked to find out she had a curve of 25 degrees and had lots more growing to do. After just 3 months of using the exercises from the Scoliosis Mobility to Stability formula, she managed to reduce her curve by 15 degrees. You're going to enjoy this one. This is an x-ray of Charlotte's back. The first thing her parents noticed was her rib hump. They noticed that on the upper right back, and she was bending over one day and they were surprised to see this hump. Now, she was 12 years old. So they did the right thing. They got some standing x-rays, which included the pelvis, the whole spine, the lower half of the skull, and her shoulder girdle. You can see that there. Now, this allowed the doctor to rule out any obvious causes of the scoliosis. But as there was nothing like one of those wedge vertebrae or something that she was born with, she was diagnosed as having an adolescent idiopathic scoliosis. She had a 25-degree curve in her thoracic spine. Now, as she was 12, she also had a lot of growing to do, and this could mean that the curve could rapidly progress. So her doctors were quite concerned about it. So rather than do the wait and see, which is what they said that she should do, she decided to use my course. Now, after just 3 months of doing the exercises, she managed to reduce her curve by 15 degrees. Now, coincidentally, I met Charlotte again 2 years later on a hike in the Rockies. Now, she had grown a lot over those 2 years, but she had had a follow-up x-ray and there was no increase in her curve. And what was fun was she still remembered how to do her exercises. I hope you've enjoyed seeing the results of Vanessa, Michelle and Charlotte. And I want to tell you something. They followed the exact same steps that I take my students through in the Scoliosis Correction Protocol exercise course that's going to be launched in a few days from now. So imagine having me guide you through the exact exercises you need for your curve so that you could increase mobility, increase strength, and increase endurance, all the while having me support you along this every step of the way to make sure you get results. Now, sometimes you need someone who's put in the time, who's got the experience, who knows what they're talking about. Imagine how much time and money you'll save compared to trying figuring out all this stuff by yourself. It's impossible for me to work with every type of scoliosis though. So the Scoliosis Correction Protocol exercises are designed to work with S curves and C curves only. Now, if you're unsure what type of curve you have, go back and watch video number 2 where I explain to you how to identify your curve without actually having an x-ray. I also like to keep my online courses relatively small to make sure that everyone can get the support and help they need. So as much as I'd like to help everyone, I can only accept a small number of students onto my courses while still maintaining that level of support that's needed to provide the results you want to get. So please understand, this is a genuinely rare opportunity and spots will be granted on a first come, first served basis. This is literally the best program I've ever created and I wouldn't be surprised if it sells out in a few hours or even just a couple of days. So keep your eyes open and jump on board as soon as that registration link opens up. Now, if this is something you're interested in, make sure you click on the link under this video or somewhere on this screen and put your name on the early bird waitlist. Once you're on the early bird waitlist, you'll get access to the protocol registration link the night before the protocol launches to the public. This means you'll have a greater chance of being accepted. So make sure you place your name on the early bird waitlist. Just click on the link, fill out the form, enter your name, enter your email, and your spot will be reserved and you will get early access to the registration page. Now, in my next video, I'm going to give you some specific instructions that you can follow to make sure you get a spot in the program. I'll also share some information about my online scoliosis correction exercise course and how it's probably different from anything you've seen before. Now, that being said, make sure you get your name on the early bird list. I'll have a link below or somewhere on this page, and I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next video.